Welcome back to the show, guys. This is kind of an interesting episode. We had Hank from Rattlesnake Cables actually recommend this guest. So this is one of those spur of the moment DM on Instagram. But before we get to today's show, let's go ahead and knock out some housekeeping. If you'd like to check out anything I'm doing on any other social media, that would be Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff, threads. All that will be linked down below in the show notes. You can check out, I do have a Patreon now. For as little as $3 a month, you can help support this channel. And what does that get you exactly? Well, that'll get you exclusive first look to the guests that I'm having come on and opportunities to ask questions that will have top priority for those guests. So if that's something you'd be interested in doing, go ahead and head on down to the show notes. All those links will be down there. But as always, the easiest and the free way to help support this channel is just to share this podcast with a friend. If you guys are watching this, make sure you like, comment, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff that you already know what to do. But enough of all this. Let's go ahead and get to today's guest. Welcome back to Man the Helm podcast. Today I am sitting down with Sean Kochel of Kochel Guitars. How's it going, dude?
It's doing good, thanks. How about yourself?
Not too bad at all, dude. I keep saying this, and I'm not going to apologize for this because this is why I love the day and age in which we live in. I spoke to Hank. He recommended I reach out to you, and here we are now, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's a great
Yep.
time to live. Yeah,
For sure.
because that's the first thing. We kind of talked a little bit after the fact, and he's all like, "Oh, dude, if you're looking for guests, you need to hit up Sean." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, there we go. Hit up Instagram, found you right away." I was like, "Hey, DM, so we're good to go."
Yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, the unfortunate side of this, well, fortunate and kind of unfortunate, I don't really know a whole lot about you. So maybe we can start from when you started getting into music, and we can kind of work our way up to where we are today, if that's cool with you.
All right, yeah. Sure. I mean, I've always been into music. I grew up in a family with music all around. Starting way back from as far as I can remember, my grandpa had band, and everything kind of progressed from there. And then my folks always had like music playing in the house. I had older siblings, which then got me started into rock and roll a lot earlier than most kids my age. And
Sure.
and then just the fast tracked up through to finally wanting to start playing an instrument myself. And when I could actually afford a guitar myself, that's what I got into, was high school. But we always had musical instruments around, but they were my grandparents were from Croatia, and so we had these. So they're Croatian instruments called tamburicas, and that's what was around the house. And I didn't. By the time I was getting old enough, my grandpa had passed away, and then they were instruments that you looked at, you didn't touch because they had all this sentimental value. So, yeah, it wasn't really until like early high school that I got into, just picking up other people's guitars, and then I finally had enough money saved up on my own, and I bought a guitar, and then I went from there. So.
What was that guitar that you bought? The first guitar you had?
This is so cheesy. It was an acoustic guitar, and I had absolutely no idea at the time. I went to a music store, and the name of the guitar said Montana. And I don't know if you remember these. They were like from Korea or someplace. They were really cheap. Mm-hmm. But I was under the assumption that I live in Montana. This has got to be from Montana. It says Montana. Not even thinking of looking, talking to the people at the music store. They just wanted to sell a guitar, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's great." Not realizing that it was a tank, and that was it. Yeah.
Well,
so then after that,
oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say after that guitar, and then I started playing with my brother-in-law and my little brother, and he had a really nice Takamine, and I was like, "Ooh, that's what a nicer guitar feels like." He had one of the older '70s models, And so then I went and found another guitar, and it just kind of progressed from there. And then I really got into doing repair work. I'd find guitars and then just take them apart, or like if they had a broken top or a broken fretboard or a new saddle, I'd just start doing those type of things and just started collecting guitars and getting better guitars. And yeah, so that was kind of the progression of it from.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of like I teach guitar at a local mom and pop shop, and that's one of the first things I tell to the newer students is like, dude, you guys are so lucky to have, these base model guitars these days are so good compared to, 25 years ago when like you said, you're walking into a music shop and they're telling you something that's like, something that's just absolutely worst crafted, instrument you could possibly get for the lowest price. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
yeah, for sure.
The repairs, the people that I've talked to that actually build though, that's a common trend. You start tinkering with the small repairs. Something manageable, because at surface level, looking at a guitar especially, there's not really a whole lot going on. At least when you first kind of take a look at it, you know what I mean? These basic small repairs are usually not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and that's just exactly right. It was a good entry point for just getting your feet wet and not having a whole lot invested into the whole thing, So, and then when it worked out, it was like, oh, this is awesome. So I had
Right.
another guitar.
Yeah. So when did you start diving a little bit more deeply into, like, instead of just thinking about the repair side of things, like I think I could actually make one of these?
Oh, so kind of a backstory of that. I started a bee company, a bee business with my dad, and my dad and I had this business going for a while, and I'd buy tools every once in a while for the guitar repair. I'd buy like a bridge setter or some files or whatever, and also in between times of doing the bees, I was tearing down old buildings, and so then I was accumulating all this wood. Long story short, my dad got sick, passed away. The bee business went belly up around the same time. Like, I lost all my bees. They died on a commercial scale. Oops, I hit that mic. And anyway, for that winter, I was like, being depressed and bummed out. I was like, I'm just going to build that guitar. And that's what I did. That was that first guitar I built. And then, so I built the guitar, and it was just a simple box guitar at the time. This was in 2003. Okay. Yeah. And showed it to my family, and they're like, oh, wow, that is amazing. And at the time, my mom says, hey, I'm doing this craft show. I'll take a few of those with me if you don't mind. I was like, yeah, go ahead. I don't care. I didn't think anything of it at the time. And she came back. She's like, I sold all those. They're gone. I was like, whoa, that's crazy. I thought it was kind of cool, but kind of cheesy at the same time. But then it just perpetuated, and I just started building them more and more and more and more. And then, so like that first year, from that Christmas of 2003 into 2004, 2000. Yeah, right in there, 2003, 2004. Built like 60 of them. I was like, oh, that's fun.
Nice.
I'll now supplement this bee company. I'll resurrect it, right? And then I went into the next year, more orders. And it just I was like, wait a minute, this is a full-time gig now. And it just kept going and kept going. Clear up till, 2006, I started using that wood that I collected from all these old antique buildings. And I started creating the boxes myself. And because before it was just a cigar box type thing. And or any kind of found box for that matter. But then I started using my own wood, and then sales really rocketed. And because I created a couple models that were way unique, because that was when that whole cigar box revolution thing kind of kicked off.
Right.
Already having a couple years into it, I was a little ahead of the curve. And then 2008 hit, And on the side, I've been working on building a regular acoustic guitar, a standard acoustic. But when 2008 hit, those cigar box, all that kind of stuff kind of took a dive. I was building stomp boxes and cigar box guitars, and it was just like, oh, I'm not getting any sales, and I was kind of now dependent on as a business. I still work part time at like a furniture repair shop and a window place doing windows, but anyway, I was like, well, I gotta step it up. So I invested in more tools. I bought blueprints, more plans. I started deconstructing some of these guitars that I had in my collection and figuring things out. And I was like, well, I can just start building this stuff. I've got the tools. And so I started doing that. And then, like, right at 2008, it just started picking back up again. And then it was just like full bore again. And it was a whole different client after that. It was like people taking me a little bit more serious, building a little higher grade guitar. But I was still trying to keep this aesthetic that I had going on. And it just has perpetuated ever since. I mean, I've obviously have had ups and downs with the economy or lack of marketing or something at times, but at the same time, I've always got work coming in, which is always nice. But
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that scrolling just through your Instagram, man, like aesthetically they pop out at you, so then you want to know more. So I I haven't had a chance to dive like super deep yet into the stuff, but like I said, just when after I talked to Hank, I was just scrolling through your Instagram feed, like, dude, these are gorgeous. But now, understanding the backstory of how you kind of got most of that wood, that makes perfect sense of that aesthetic that you're kind of shooting with. You know what I mean? It's very familiar, but it's also something that's completely unique at the same time. You know, I mean, it's a guitar. I can physically see that, but it's not like any guitar I've ever seen before. You know,
Oh,
it's
that's awesome.
super
Yeah,
rad.
thank you. This just
Oh,
also
dude,
comes
absolutely.
back to kind of how I operate a lot in life. Is I always try to make do with what I got, and I like
Hmm.
the idea that like I was using something that already had a life to begin with. That's why I never ever got into the idea of going and buying some exotic wood. I just like the idea of using something because I always was thinking it's like, what if this was my only source for making something was the materials that I had around me. I mean, think back in the olden days when that was the case for most people. You know, they weren't able to source wood from South America or get ivory from wherever. You know, just here I am building this thing. I'm going to use the materials that I have around me to create this thing, and that's kind of been my whole approach. But at the same time, I like the idea of like putting this nostalgic look that might have never existed, but it still looks familiar, like you said, like something that
Yeah.
could have been around 120 years ago or something. So
For sure, but the awesome thing about when you make something, but you kind of put these like left and right limits on yourself, where you're really kind of confining yourself. That's when a lot of really awesome artistic things happen. When you have to work with what you have, you know what I mean? Like you don't have
yeah,
another option at that point. You know, you're going to make it work, and there's some. I'm sure you've had to, you know, make compromises in some cases when materials won't work out or something, and you still make it work though. But it makes it something unique just to you at that point. You know what I mean? Because now it's like, yeah, of course you can go to another, you know, builder that can get you any piece of exotic material that you could absolutely ever want, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But if you want
yeah,
something
yeah,
that, yeah, if you want something that somebody, you know, had to really work with, you know what I mean, had to make it work with just the materials they have, there's definitely a different type of mojo that happens with those instruments. You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure. The part of the thing I'd just like to say, this is was also part of my interest in this. I'd tear down these buildings. I mean, it'd take me weeks and months sometimes, but like I'd get the backstory from the farmer who I was tearing the building down, you know, and they'd tell me like, oh,
Hmm.
this was for instance, like one of my very favorite pieces was there was a 1897 railroad ice house, and it was part of the Milwaukee Railroad when it came through. But it was a place where they'd store ice to refrigerate food before refrigeration, and when the train would stop through and load up to to put product on, and to know that that wood came from the old growth forest of the first time they came and chopped down the trees. To know that that's what the material they used, and then it became this cool building that had this this local historical significance, and then now I'm making it into a guitar and I'm relaying the story to the person who bought the guitar, where this material came from and what its original life was. And I just always like, oh, that's so cool to me in my mind. It's just like, oh, I'm getting this piece of history that otherwise would have rotted away or been gone or never exist. So that's kind of my thought on the whole thing.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing, man. Like the story is always so much better than the physical item when it comes to gear and stuff like that, especially guitars. Like it's like whenever I interview somebody, like whatever their accolades are, if maybe they're an artist, like I don't really care. I know what you're doing right now. I can see that you're touring. I can see that you're recording an album or whatever. I want to know what got you into the headspace to get to that point. You know what I mean? Same thing with instruments or pedals or anything. You know what I mean? Like I want to know what the process was, man. Like, because at the end of the day, if it plays good and it sounds good, I'm probably gonna like it. But
Right.
you're adding an extra, yeah, you're adding an extra factor now when you have this historical significance. And like I said, it's gonna inspire you to play that instrument a little bit differently than just something you grabbed off of a shelf at a local shop. You know what I mean?
Well, exactly, for sure. I feel like it evokes a little bit of mojo into the piece already. Just a little something.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're going to treat it different and play it different. Because now, well, in the last, 15, 20 years, there's become so many new guitar builders. There's so many guys building guitars. And there's so many good guitar builders. How do you say one guy's better than the other when there's so many people doing an awesome job at the job of being a guitar builder? It's really hard. So I feel like you just said, if you give the story, if they know where it's coming from, then it's just another tool in the toolbox when you're up there performing or at home just creating or whatever it is, So.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I mean the pieces of gear that I truly love and go back to have a story behind it. The stuff that I just kind of found on a whim and I had cash in my pocket, like I usually end up getting rid of it. And I'm not trying to say that as like I didn't like it or anything. It just I don't have an attachment to it, It's not that big of a deal. But there are certain items that I do have that I'll never get rid of just because of the sentimentals and the story behind that piece of gear. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and it sounds kind of cheesy to say that about like wood and steel and strings and stuff like that. But I mean, for musicians, it's really what it is. It's almost like a higher level experience playing something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I just, yeah, I mean, I don't know really much more to say about it, but it's just, I do the same thing with almost everything that I own. Like, there's the consumer item that you have, but every once in a while you'll get, let's say, a favorite coffee mug or whatever, and you'll keep it around even though it might look like a piece of junk, but it has this, like, hey, I was on this trip and I ran into, the whole story that goes with when you got that item, and then it has that, and then it becomes your favorite or something that's your go-to, even though sometimes it might be hard to use or not the easiest to use, but at the same time it becomes a favorite in a way. So
yeah. Well, what are some what are some because you're self-taught as far as the luthier process goes. Am I correct in that assumption?
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never went to school or anything like that.
I assume so, but I try not to do too much assuming. The old adage.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
What were some of those like pitfalls? Because I know like getting orders and starting to sell some stuff, like it's exciting, but then when you start to take it up that notch, when we're starting to actually, this is going to be what I'm going to do full time now. What were some pitfalls and like learning curves you had to like quickly adapt to get over in that process?
Well, I mean, just dealing with people in general, and
Sure,
being.
sure.
Well, the other thing was, I mean, I'm trying to mellow out, but I used to be pretty hot-headed, and then let things roll off my back a little bit more, not be so sensitive to, because I realize that sometimes people are not having the best day and then you're just having to maybe talk them off the ledge. I haven't had too many of those situations, but I've had enough to where they've been irritating, but letting things go like that. But as far as building goes on the learning curve, it was, I used to make everything to fit me and what I like to play and how I like to play it, and realizing that's not how most people, I felt like it was because I learned on that hard to learn on guitar, to where like a lot of things that might be a little clunky to some people weren't too clunky to me because I've been so used to it, like maybe a thicker neck or a high action or something like that. So those types of things of learning the fact of like, oh, I've got to get this guitar to intonate with this string height, and not everybody wants to play slide, right? So those types of things.
Sure.
Also, early on, even though the guitars look like they're made 100 years ago, I found, and this was pretty obvious from the beginning, but that's all an aesthetic. I have an underlying, like the meat of the guitar is actually made out of new material with I want this thing to last 100 plus years, So a lot of that is just the aesthetic as far as the wood is veneered over to make it look old. Underneath I have either like alder or some new maple, Nexer maple, and different things like that. So knowing that I have to use materials that are going to last. The other thing was when I got busy, not realizing I was going to have as many orders, sourcing material. So I used to spend a lot of time, because Montana, there's a lot of rural space, running around out in the country, asking if I could, hey, can I have that building? Can I go through that scrap pile? Because that was the other thing. I used to go take scrap metal by hand and cut out all the pick guards, and until I got cut really bad one day. That's when I was like, oh, I got to change this up. Yeah, and then now over the years, because of new tooling, I guess I've had it for going on 10 years, but like using different kinds of tools like a CNC machine to keep because I'm in a production mode and I need to keep everything, like if I sell a guitar and a guy needs a new neck set or whatever, I could send him a neck and every neck's going to bolt on, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Just different things like that. I do build acoustic instruments, but I try to steer people away from me wanting to do that, because by all the time I put into that and what my return, because I'm eating up all my time from building those like more of the solid or the hollow body resonators, that somebody who there's so many guys building such awesome acoustic guitars now, like you should go approach that guy for the work, so
yeah. Well, that's a really mature outlook too, because there's nothing scarier than when you have that small business that starts to take off and you don't know if you can handle the work.
I've done that a couple times where I got in over my head. Yeah, and I'm a one-man show. No, it doesn't. And then I'm sitting there having to apologize and explaining to people that that job I said it was only going to take 6 months. Well, tack another 6 months on there. I didn't like having to do that. So I learned that I only take X amount of work. And so yeah, that was definitely one of those types of things. So
well, how like as of right now, what are you looking like per year? What's your average build that you're doing per year?
How many builds do I do a year?
Yes, sir.
About 25 to 30 guitars a year. That's what I do right now.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah. Nice.
So,
and that's just I'm sure that's just enough for you to stay busy all the time, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And what I would really like it more on that 30 end would be preferable. But what happens is I'll get so busy because this is just me. I know there's people out there who could help me and whatnot. I need to create a team someday, but I'm working, and then what's tough about running a business by yourself is then I let other things slip, right? Then all of a sudden I'm not posting like I should, or I'm not putting out those email reminders like I should, so it's hard to wear all the hats because I want to also do a really good job on your guitar because I want you to be happy when you get it, and it's just it's a crazy balance. And then I have a life on top of it. So because you could literally, building guitars, you could let yourself get up in the morning until you go to bed at night and not stop. I mean, that's just how you could always be doing something,
Yeah.
So
well, I mean, it's the same. It's the same aspect on the more administrative side. I mean, you could be working from dusk till dawn on the social media or the email stuff, or just basic books, too. I mean, that's the thing that I like to pull the curtain back when I have gentlemen like yourself on, or anybody that's doing something that they're running their own business, because especially like you said, if it's a one-man show, you've got like 17 hats you have to wear simultaneously throughout the day. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And it's good to have that level of understanding, because then when you do get approached about, hey, I really like the aesthetics of your stuff, I want to talk about a build. Well, now I understand the amount of work, not just the building itself, but the amount of work that you have to do daily just to get that out to that customer. You know what I mean?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it more than just building the actual instrument. It's funny though because people will get a hold of you and they'll think there's a team of people, and then you're just one of the people doing one of the jobs, and then they don't understand why it's maybe not happening faster, or like why there's such a lead time, or whatever. That hasn't been such the case over the last 2 years, but in years prior, I felt like there was a time there where everybody thought they were ordering off of Amazon or something. They wanted it now.
Right.
And then you try to explain to them, well, first off, well, I haven't made things overly convenient for myself, and I'm not making excuses. It's just the way it is. I live about 30 miles from my shop, so I got to drive up to my shop every day, which makes things a little difficult. And then and the shop doesn't have the best internet connection, so I wait on the email and stuff a lot of times until I get back home to do that type of work. So I mean, it's always just a juggle. I'm just constantly juggling, and sometimes I really love it, and other times I'm like, what in the heck am I doing? So.
Oh, I believe it, dude. Like I've had, I think everybody in that creative space has those moments, really, or really anybody that's working for themselves has those moments, probably at least. I know I have them almost daily of, man, what are you doing? Why are you putting yourself through this? What are you doing? Just go get a real job, man. And that sort of mentality.
Yeah, I know.
But it's one of those things that I've tried to relay this to other people too. It's like it's the passion that drives you through those rough days, those rough weeks, those rough months. You know what I mean? That's really what's getting you through, man. Because I mean, I think it's funny whenever I've talked to people that are kind of on the outside of whatever part of the music industry you want to say, where they think there's all this money here. It's like, dude, if you want to make money, you don't need to get into the music industry. There's not a lot of money to be made here, man. You're looking at the 1% of people that are extremely successful here.
Yeah, it takes a lot. I always felt like, well, if I wanted to be super successful in the business in the music industry, I would probably be some kind of middle management man of some sort, where you're, taking the cash, but doing the work, like the musician or the builder or the guy making the cables or the guy making the pedals. That's a lot tougher road to haul than it is for some other of the jobs in the industry, I'm sure. So.
Well, that's true, but the fulfillment factor is through the roof for what you do. You're getting to work, you're getting to build something, you're getting to pass this awesome piece of gear plus the history aspect on to the next person and kind of keep that legacy going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, I do. It's weird because I'll get into a headspace every once in a while where, like we were just saying, where I'll be like, "What am I doing?" But then, why do I keep doing it? And I still keep at it. It's just a weird thing, and it's like I can't stop for some weird reason.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, this is what I'm doing, and I got to just keep doing it. So, yeah, and I definitely have my ups and downs with all that.
Well, and everybody does, man. Like that's the thing that I also like to talk to people about when I have them on the show. You know what I mean? Because it's not always great. It's not the picturesque Instagram beach pictures every day. You know what I mean? Or
Right.
whatever people
Yeah.
are looking at. You know. But at the end of the day, if it's something that you're passionate about and it's something that you enjoy doing, yeah, you could go make a lot of more money, working at a job you hate for the rest of your life. But I mean, dude, that's a kind of a crappy way to live, in my opinion, at least.
Oh yeah, I agree
You
with
know?
you 100%. Yeah,
But
I know.
unfortunately, there's so many people that do that. Like not most people, that's the norm. Where you're waking up at 6 o'clock to go to a job you hate for 8 to 10 hours. You know.
Well, I think we're conditioned that way as kids, most of us, and
Yeah.
to break out of that cycle is a really hard thing to do because it's really scary when you take that leap because you don't even know what you're doing, and it's like trying to find your footing. And then because I remember just always questioning is like, well, when do I get to go on my own? When do I get to be on my own? And then how do I even do this? And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I'm on my own. I'm doing it, without it's hard and scary. But once you get going, then you're like, okay, I got over that hurdle, and then you just get down to it. But yeah, I can't imagine, for the sake of money, being totally miserable for 30 some years and contemplating, just like becoming a shallow shell of a human. I guess I'd rather just be who I am and do what I do, for that matter. So.
Well, dude, and I was talking to a few friends about this the other day too, man. It's like the people that are the most happy are usually the people that are the most unabashedly themselves. They do what they want to do. Within reason, of course. We don't want to do anything stupid.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Well, I'll tell you what. Let's walk through let's say let's get the process from I shoot you an email saying I really like your stuff. How do we go about building a guitar from here?
I usually ask. I'll be like, "How did you find me?" Or if they already said, "Hey, I saw this guitar," then I'll be like, "Well, what would you like? What was?" Because I want to know what your thoughts are. Because usually people are drawn towards a certain aspect of what I do, and then we'll build off that. And then it'll just go from there. Let them know there's options. And then the other thing is, I get two approaches. There's that one. That's the most common. But I get this other one where people out of the blue get a hold of me and they want it custom right off the bat. They don't want to give me any kind. They're like, and they want to. They're like, I want this type of cover plate. I want this color. I want this neck radius. I want this scale, and then I go from there. Also, I'll be like, all right, well, I'll go and sketch up some plans, see if I can even make the instrument, which most times I can. Or if it sounds too ridiculous, I might try to steer them in the wrong direction, or a different direction, not the wrong direction, but steer them in a different direction.
Yeah.
So it's just a conversation of what you're interested in, what you're looking for, and then we just start the conversation. And then I let them know all their different options and what works the best for what I do, and then it just kind of goes from there. So it's kind of an open conversation at first, but then also a lot of times people need to be steered in a certain direction, and then I'll help them with those types of things. And it's usually stuff like, unless you really know, it's pickups. Like, hey, I want this this kind of pickup. And I work with a company right now that winds my pickups for me. And there's a specific one that I like that they use. Yeah, Magneto Design Labs out of North Carolina, and I always liked their Mini P90. And I used to work with Rio Grande out of Texas for a long time. Dave, the guy who used to run that, passed away, and then since I lost contact with him, I kind of broke contact with the company until they got reestablished again. But I just found over the years of using these different pickups in that guitar, in that model, that there's certain ones that really work. And a lot of guys will be like, no, I want a humbucker of some sort, or hot, I want hot, or I want it jazz, or whatever, which is fine. But most of the time, people let me kind of steer them in that direction when they don't know. And then the other thing I've found is like a lot of times I'll get an order from a studio musician, like a session musician, and they want like something crazy. They want like, hey, can you do a hot rod cover? And there's this crazy pickup that I've never even heard of or seen, or some kind of newfangled thing. Do you think you could wire this in? I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a try, and then and do those types of one-offs. So there's some really wild stuff that people come up with, and I let them know off the bat, like, hey, this is the first one ever. I don't even know if this will work, but theoretically it should work, and we do those types of things. So
nice. Well,
yeah.
I know of a handful. I'm just north of Nashville, and I know a handful of builders down in that area, and it always makes me kind of chuckle a little bit with the hyper specific people that you were talking about. Like, I want it this way with this, and this. I want any originality that I came to you for as a builder out the window because I want a Telecaster. It's like, dude, just go buy a Telecaster then.
Yep, I know. I feel the same way. I just like, what? And then you send it to them. They're like, well, Fender does it like this. Why don't you just go that route to begin with? So
right. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody that's out there that wants that sort of stuff and go to a builder to do that. But it blows me away. It doesn't make sense in my mind. That's all I'm saying.
It's hard on the guy making the instrument.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, it's you're getting, if you don't want to have something from like a big box shop, if you don't want the typical top 4 food groups or whatever, the Gibsons, Les Paul, or the Fenders, Gretsch, PRS, whatever your typical lineup of high-end guitars are, and you want something a little more personable, a little more different, has a little bit of a vibe to it, it's like, dude, you got to let some of that stuff go and just be like, hey, this is what I like. What do you think you could do with this sort of idea? And then let that person that's crafting that instrument kind of put their own little twist on it. You know what I mean? Obviously not something like, you're not going to do anything super wild outside of what the customer wouldn't want, but, it's going to be something of yours that you're making for them,
Right. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And that's just it. Yeah, it's just, people are funny, and there's a lot of funny things that happen in the world of music and instrument building that you would never expect. And I'm sure it happens in any industry in life, Yeah, it just blows me away when somebody comes back and tells me, says, oh, can you do it like this company or that company? And I'll be like, well, I do what I do. I can try my best to do it that way, but yeah. I really haven't had that many problems with people in general, actually. I'm making it sound like maybe I have. In the 20 years that I've been building guitars, literally on one hand I can count the bad issues I've had with just customer relations, and
sure.
And somebody I felt like might have been drunk when they put the order in. So
yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I once again, I like to try to have these conversations to kind of relay that to people, because every builder I've talked to has had a handful of those experiences. You know what I mean? It's always why I really like Sir guitars. It's like, cool, dude, we'll go get a Sir, or whatever it is. I'm kind of beating a dead horse at this point, but
right, yeah.
I just don't. I don't understand the thought process, I guess, but I guess I'm not meant to. So, from start to finish, what does a typical build time looks like for you?
So, like my It's depending on which guitar. It's my standard guitar, the LP style, um, solid body resonator is about my lead time's about 22 weeks.
Okay.
If I have a hollow body, that's the second most ordered guitar, and that's roughly, you can add about 3 to 4 weeks onto that. So I
Sure.
just put what I
Okay.
do is when you put in an order, I just put you in line as the next guy in line. So
Right.
as I work through things, I mean, there's somewhat of a assembly line process to it, but when it comes down to the finishing of a guitar before it gets ready to go out the door, that's where things kind of slow down a little, and some of that other stuff just sits uh, on the I'm next in line stage. So
Okay. Well, yeah, that's a pretty standard lead time for, building stuff. That's typical from what I've heard. I was just kind of curious. What's the most challenging part whenever you get something like this for, like, let's say a custom order outside of like the crazy stuff? Like, is there anything that you really struggle with these days? I'm sure there's not because you've been doing it for so long. But was there a piece of the building process that you were initially struggled with? I guess is my question.
uh, well, yeah. Until I figured it out, it was just trying to get, like, when somebody wants a certain uh, relief on their neck. That was one thing.
Okay.
Like, I want, hey, I'm a picker. I like to play, or I play fingerstyle, or I play slide. And then for the longest time, excuse me, I would just set it up to how I would play it. And then a lot of times that wasn't the best for the guy I sent it to. And then now I've got it to where I can dial it in, and I can get it to what you how you want to play it, I guess. But that's been my biggest struggle, is getting that. And then with the resonators, my break angle coming off my cone, which I finally, because I'm trying to figure these things out, and I try to get a hold of other people to try to help me out, and they're like, I don't know, dude. I don't build resonators, or this is what I know, or what you read online. There's so many different um, opinions on different things, and then it was just a matter over time just figuring things out. Um, so yeah, just small little details, and then just like things like in the middle of a build, it'll be like I'm thinking of just how to make the process better, and then I'm like, oh, I could build a jig and it would do this, and then I can create this, and then it wouldn't be I can get it consistent. It won't be so hard every time, and it'll just be something that's just part of the process now. So yeah, it's constantly evolving. Um, like I'd say, like this last year and a half, well, especially this last year, just because of different tooling and different ideas, the guitars have become such a more tuned machine than they were, I'd say, like 8 years ago, or whatever it was. So, um, but yeah,
Well,
as far as
well,
right now, it's. Oh, go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say that's what you got to do though, man. You got to push that needle a little bit every day, man. That's all. That's all it is.
Well, yeah, because I have this idea in my head of this perfect instrument that I'd love to someday build, and I'm going to be happy for the guy who ever gets it. But I also appreciate the people that also appreciate what I do for them now. So, um, yeah, it's
Well,
it's
it's the process of learning and refining. Once again, man, it's not the finished product. That's where the magic is, man. That process that you're going through right now, that you've been going through, that's where it's at, dude.
yeah. Well, it's a weird thing because I always think, it's like, when am I just going to get this all? When is it all just going to be perfect? And
Yeah.
it's never that way. And then I think, well, maybe I need to change my whole aesthetic instead of building these guitars that have this certain look and feel. I can start just building like out of the fancy woods and doing this, and then I can have it all crisp and clean and whatnot. But that is just not who I am, and that's part
Yeah.
of the reason that I can't go that direction. It's just.
Well, I don't think you should. I think you should
Oh,
just
I
be
appreciate
doing what you're
it.
doing, dude. Yeah. Like, well, and the reason why I say that is, I mean, I've already said it, but there's plenty of other people out there that are making the slick, shiny, flashy, boutique, super high end wood guitars already. You know what I mean? You
Yeah.
can probably name 30,
Oh
that you
yeah.
could go,
Hmm.
find at the very least. But to find something like actually genuinely unique is kind of hard to do because even when it comes down to something as general as the shape of a guitar, like we're kind of stuck with, like, at least like guitar players have been conditioned to think about, like, I've got like my 4 or 5 styles of guitar, like the body style, just by looking at it at first glance. You know what I mean? So even just the aesthetic of the guitar has been kind of baked into our mind of this is what it has to be. You know,
Yep.
so seeing people that are doing something like just pushing the boundaries, pushing those norms just a little bit further every time. You know what I mean? That's what's really exciting. You know what I mean? Seeing something completely different. It's not another. What's a good pedal analogy? It's not another tube screamer. I don't have another green
Yeah.
box on my board. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, I do. And what's funny though, when you were saying that, it made me think was you see guys trying to totally change what you think of as far as a guitar look, what a guitar should look like, and a lot of times it just looks like to me like they're trying too hard, and that's fine because I know guys who like that kind of thing. But in my mind, but then there's other guys who nail it, like have a whole new unique design idea, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is amazing, and that's so awesome. So yeah, everybody kind of has, if you find your own way and create your own market and or your own niche in that whole market and keep going with it, because I feel like for those other guitar builders who do that and who do it well, it's just such a fun thing to see their progression too. Thinking of other guys that I know over the years, just like, oh man, you got that down. And every time I think you got an awesome guitar, that next one's even better. I love seeing that. So
Yeah, and that's the thing with musicians, I think, because I think we've if you've played any instrument, you've spent a decent amount of time alone. So when you do find that community of other musicians, whether they're people that are playing, whether they're people that are building, whether they're, it doesn't matter, whatever capacity they're contributing to that, musical culture, you automatically have that connection of, dude, we did the same thing. You know what I mean? Like we
yeah,
both sat in a room by ourselves for a long time trying to
yeah.
craft this, man, and now we're starting to maybe see the fruits of our labors here 20 years later. You know?
Yeah, I know. That's the crazy thing. And I think about that too. It's just like, because it seems like yesterday in a way, but at the same time, it seems like a long time. But it's just like, oh, 2025 will be 20 years. I've been in business, always thinking, like, what's the next thing? Like, I always have other guitars that I build on the side for, that I experiment, like, with ideas and different thoughts or things that
Hmm.
I kind of want to do. But at the same time, I'm always just thinking as far as the business goes, or just the building itself, like, oh, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Um, and it's funny how time just goes by and not realizing that you've been at this grind of this job for so long that it's just a part of who you are. So
Yeah.
I had a thought when I
Well,
first started talking, and I can't remember what I was even saying there, but
oh no, you're good. Completely okay, dude. I do that all the time, man. I cannot, if I had $1 for every time I forgot mid sentence what I was supposed to say, man, I
okay,
wouldn't be working
okay,
anymore, dude. So
oh,
no,
okay,
completely fine.
okay,
Well, speaking of, moving forward, what's the, next, well, we're pretty much almost done with this year. We've got about another, what, 3, 4 months left.
yeah.
What's on the horizon for like the next 2 years for you, man?
Next 2 years? Um, Yikes! I couldn't tell you, to be honest. I mean, I have work, but and I got some cool stuff I'm doing right now. I have two really cool projects going on that I'm excited to do. But something that I would like to get more into is the fact that I do these custom covers for the guitars, the cover plates for the resonators. I like that whole design aspect. But like right now, I'm working on this bass, resonator bass that I'm pretty excited to be a part of. And then the other thing that I've got going on is where I used to source outside. I used to source my maple and my black walnut and stuff. Well, I do a urban logging project, and I go get the trees myself now, and I've got a sawmill, and I mill up all the lumber for my necks and all that stuff, and then I built a kiln, so I have a wood kiln to dry all my wood out. So I don't have to spend money on buying all that material anymore. So that's kind of one thing I'm really excited about, the fact that I can do these choice cuts on these trees, and because these are trees that would normally just be taken to the landfill, and like we just had a big storm come through here about a month ago, and it destroyed so many trees. Like we got like we don't get wind here, but we just had 100-mile-an-hour winds in a town that doesn't get wind. So it destroyed 100-year-old trees, and there's all these like big maples and whatnot had gone down. Well, I scrambled trying to get a hold of all these tree guys. Like, don't haul those off, haul them to me, So
right,
yeah. So it's just having that capacity now of having the equipment to haul it up to my sawmill and be able to mill that lumber. And so I'd like to also kind of get more into doing some of those as far as like a sustainable guitar, instead of not necessarily always using the antique barnwood or the antique building. I can now use the sustainable, like do these like I got this really cool mountain ash and some these mainly maples that have curly figure and different things like that. And I've also have the ability to do some arch tops, which I always kind of work on in the back. Like when I have some time, I'll work on that. Someday I'd like to be able to showcase those a little bit more. But nice. Yeah, I guess it's just keep coming up with new ideas while still just working on the regular orders that come in. So the other thing I didn't mention that goes with my guitar business is it could be a whole business in its own, and I've done good with it over the years, is I build stomp boxes that you hook into your amp. It just has a piezo pickup in them, and like I'll batch those out and like sell them to a music store that they just resell, and that's always a good thing too that I always like to push are the stomp boxes, because they work great, they serve a function, and for how simple they are, and they always get a good people love what, just for how simple they are, they get the good response. You know what I mean? So I always like to push those also. So
for sure. Well, okay, you got to get me learned real quick. Okay, so I'm not a big gear guy. Okay, so let's talk about those stomp boxes for just a second. Okay, so what exactly do they do? And tell me more.
I always say it's like bringing the front porch to you, giving you the mojo. It's everything from a knock on the door to a deep bass thump, and what it really comes down to is how you have your amp set. But it's just it's especially like back in the day when that one-man band thing was kind of a big thing for a while there, or maybe it still is. I don't know. I don't pay as much attention to it as I used to, but a lot of guys would order them because then now he's got a drum, or she's got a drum that she's kicking as she's playing or he's playing. And then I used to get a lot of like I've had bigger musicians buy them, and when they hook through a big PA, it's just this big bass drum kick to it, and it's just like, and they're like, oh, this thing is so simple. I'm just sitting here tapping my foot, and boom, get the boom, and you get the rhythm going. Yeah, that's it's just a fun thing. It's just sits under your foot as you're playing, and you just give it a tap.
Dude, that's
I know they're called stomp. Yeah, they're fun. So.
Well, and it's good. It ties in with the theme of the guitars as well, man. Because I mean, that's kind of I've seen. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that was the whole thing when I very first started. Did you ever see when you were a kid? I'm guessing maybe we're close to the same age. Remember when that movie Crossroads came out with Ralph Macchio, and he was
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
retelling the story of Robert Johnson in a way. And that was I fell in love with that movie, especially at the end when he has the duel with Steve Vai. But that was my whole idea of when I was first building the instruments that I was building. Was this blues Americana? I just love that sound. And then that stomp box was like, when I started building, I was like, well, you need something to go with that. It can't just be, you need something to stomp. So that's where that all came from.
Well, dude, that's super rad, man. Like and forgive my ignorance on that, man. I didn't even realize that you did that sort of stuff. I thought it was just mostly the guitar stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's because I vend. And I used to vend a lot. Go to like festivals and down to like art markets and different things. And it was just I needed to have something because I knew I wasn't going to sell a guitar every time, but I might sell 5 stomp boxes and make it worth my while being down there and wasting a Saturday or whatever. Not necessarily wasting, but just if I didn't get a guitar sale,
yeah.
I didn't go home feeling bad. So
Right. Awesome. Well, before we wrap this up, where can everybody find you at?
So, of course, I'm on all the social media as far as just, all the social media, all 2 of them that I'm on, Facebook and Instagram. I guess I'm not on all of them. And then just, I have a newsletter if you sign up, and periodically, maybe twice a year, I send out. I don't flood anybody's inbox by any means with that, but at kochelguitars.com is where I'm at. You can find me at Kochel Guitars on Instagram and Facebook also. So
awesome.
I wanted to tell you is just to give some incentive to your listeners. If they mention they hear about me on your podcast and they put in an order, they get a stomp box. A stomp box comes with your order. So that's a gift to them from hearing it from here. So
Hey, there you go. Hey, listeners, get on this. Everything is going to be linked down below, so if you want to check out all the awesome stuff that Sean is up to, you can just go right down to the show notes. Order yourself a guitar and get a stomp box. Easy thing to do.
Yeah. Order a stomp box, get a guitar.
Oh, yeah. Not that way around. We're flipping it. We got to flip that the other way around.
No, I'm just being
anyway.
silly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, Sean, I appreciate you taking the time, dude.
Yeah, I appreciate you getting a hold of me, and I really appreciate Hank and all the help that he's given me over the years. And he's got a great company, and he's just a great guy in general. So, thank you.
Absolutely. No problem at all. Well, for Sean and for all of you guys, we will check you guys next week on Man the Helm podcast.